to address a $200 million or so budget deficit in Milwaukee Public Schools. This is the reason why that recording of that session resurfaced. People are not okay with constantly regurgitating funds, however that may look, and whatever side of the aisle you're on. People aren't okay with just giving funds and not receiving any return on their investment. And I know people like to tell me that when I say any return, watch it because there are great things happening in the district. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that there were great things happening in the district. If you pull various data points or reports and whatnot, you'll see that there are great things happening in the district. There's so much to be proud about. But the things that gives me pause are the things that I'm not so proud of. And it is my duty as an elected official to make sure that I am educating my constituents, that I am giving them access to the information that they need in order to make informed decisions about who they choose to represent them. Also, and I think more importantly, I'll say more importantly, it is my duty to lead with such transparency, accountability, honesty, whatever. But it's my duty to do so in a way that is going to paint the picture of the realities of what's happening in our district. In my opinion, that is how you rally support. That is how you garner support. That is how you get to the root cause of issues, when you are being honest, when you're being open, when you are sharing the real with people. It wasn't until I got into this role where I realized that you are encouraged to do quite the opposite in this space. You are encouraged to engage in private conversations until your private conversations make people so uncomfortable that they should stop answering you. You are expected to be this public official that people are relying on to lead with integrity, to receive information and to share that information and to build with the masses to ultimately create whatever changes are necessary. You're even then, you're expected to do so in a very discreet or private way. And I remember in previous discussions that I've had with board members, I shared my frustration about that because I never committed to leading and making moves in secrecy or in silence in this space where people are relying on me to do a job. I've worked for organizations where you don't speak on certain things that occur internally. I've worked in spaces where what goes on in this house or in this building or whatever stays in this building. But when I think about, again, complete strangers showing up to the polls and putting their trust or their faith in me and choosing me to represent their voices, that is, I have a duty, I have a responsibility to do what I say I'm going to do and do what my people need me to do. With that, I can't see myself serving in this space and sharing things that I can share publicly, because there are certain matters that we just can't talk about. But I can't sit around and clap my hands and sing the good graces in public and then plot to cover things up or hide things in private and deny it and when the public is coming after me asking me questions. I didn't sign up for that. And I realized that I have gained more enemies than allies because of that stance, and I'm okay with that. I also know that when you're dealing with so much money and so many children who deserve nothing but the best, I have to show up in a way that will make people uncomfortable. And I have to challenge and speak out against the status quo, the inequities, and everything else. And I would be lying to anyone on this platform if I say that that's going to change about me. Like I said, my mistakes fall primarily under my year one. But I've learned so much and I've grown so much, and I move very different. My position, my stance on our leadership, our practices, the unprofessionalism, the systemic and institutional racism, the covert and overt racism, I will stand firm on that. And I can provide like any documentation that I have where I've referenced or witnessed things that I've seen occur or that I've heard that were morally unjust. I won't sit back and be quiet about that. And I didn't promise my constituents that. And the day I start to be quiet about or be silent about the injustices or the unfair treatment or discriminatory practices or whatever is a day where I have lost myself in this space. So going back to the budget, when we're talking about a referendum and we're going out to ask taxpayers to bear another burden after a sales tax increase with the county and the city, we're asking them to take on this burden. And the way we're presenting it, that in and of itself is not completely transparent. I'm sitting on the board floor and I'm looking at the screen and I'm watching how things are presented, and it says first year, $140-something million. And then it has a breakdown of what it would cost a taxpayer, what the additional expense will be or added expense will be. And it's like, even this slide, if I were just tuning in right now, I would think the referendum was 140-something million for that 1 year. I may not think to dig deeper or watch the whole presentation or go back to the beginning where it said these are the three options and this is probably the one that we're going to go with, $252 million. I'm not always looking at that. And every time when I'm in that space, I'm not just thinking about how Aisha would go about doing things or how I think about things. I'm thinking about how everyone else, perhaps with the highest educational credentials or status and the lowest. And I think that is me trying to be a representative of the people in District 4. And so even in that, it was bothersome to watch that, because it's like, if I'm just tuning in, I'm going to think it's that and not this. The other part is we're sitting up there and we're pointing the fingers at state legislators. And before I go any further with that, I'm going to speak on this. I know that there are funding inequities at the state level. I understand the institutional, the systemic racism that occurs at the state level. I will never, in this lifetime or any other lifetime, given the current situation or circumstances, I would never deny the presence, the accuracy, the happenings or the actions that are happening at the state level. I have never and I will never deny that. What I do understand is this. If these funding inequities have been going on now for, I'll say 20 or so years, maybe even longer, and we're constantly using the same tactics to fight against it, and we're finding ourselves in this position where we're constantly having to ask for money or make cuts or make difficult decisions as it pertains to staffing or organizational structures to budget for or make the most out of what we're giving. I understand all of that, right? But I also understand if this is a continuous practice of state legislators, we have to change our strategies, our tactics to eliminate those opportunities for them to lead in that way. I would think that that is common sense, and I understand that it's not that easy. I understand it. But if we are really talking about systemic changes, transformational changes, we're going to have to do something different. And so my remarks at the board meeting, at Thursday's board meeting, was to not say, no, I don't think that our children deserve better. It was not to say, no, our children don't deserve more funding. It wasn't to say none of that. But it was, again, my effort, my attempt to hold the people in that space accountable for the things that we don't do. And in that, I was basically saying that it's not enough for us to keep pointing the finger at people who are going to do what we know they're going to do. It's also not okay for us to make this a ritual or a consistent practice every 4 to 5 years where we're going up to taxpayers and asking them for more money. It's not fair. And it was unfortunate because as I'm sitting in on the board floor and I'm looking in the audience, I'm seeing green shirts. I was in one of those green shirts at one point. The teachers union was present. They show up. I love it. But as I'm listening to the testimonies, I'm hearing the teachers, and they're coming from Burbank and Maryland Montessori and all of these schools that don't sound like District 4, don't look like District 4, don't feel like District 4. And I'm just sitting there and I'm trying to hold it back, but I'm angry because it's like, where's the ones that are in front of the most vulnerable of the vulnerable populations? Where are those individuals who's saying it's not just enough to talk about the financial penalty or the financial increase that one will occur or accrue during this time? It's not enough to just talk about that. When I talk about return on investment, when I talk about giving the taxpayer something to be proud of, I'm talking about all the other stuff. I'm talking about the reckless driving, the fact that yes, non-fatal and fatal homicides or shootings have gone down, but there's been an increase in uptick in fatal and non-fatal shootings with school-age children who predominantly are students in the MPS system. I'm talking about the housing disparities, things that go beyond this board, but I'm talking about the lack of investment in our communities. I'm going beyond this $200 and something increase that you are telling people this is it. It's just that. No, it's not just that. It's, what did that last referendum do that helped the children at Our Avenue, Keith Avenue, Douglas, North Division, high school? Like, what did those dollars do? Because now you're going back to those taxpayers to ask them for far more for a deficit that they didn't create. And you're asking them in this fear-mongering way that would suggest we got to cut all of this stuff or we really got to do all of the work that we should have done. When I spoke on Thursday, I was speaking beyond a $200 or so increase. I want to know what this looked like before and what it's going to look like now. One of the things that I said in a presentation, I said, like the public is now viewing this presentation. I just saw this a couple days ago. Yet I'm expected on a Thursday to show up and make an informed decision that represents my constituency, which I think is about 77 or so thousand people, although all of those people don't vote. But I'm expected to show up and make sound decisions. That's morally unjust. And I can't in good faith do that. But then since I'm in this space, I'm going to say the things that other people may be thinking, but they aren't saying. I'm going to say the things that this board is not saying, possibly because they're on this side of the aisle. I'm going to say the things that that mom who's working 2 or more jobs to make ends meet and care for her children can't show up here and say, but is a concern of hers. I'm going to say the things that that father who may have access to their child only during the school day or during those school hours would say, but he can't because he's here working or he's at home doing other things to provide for his family at that time. Like, I'm just going to speak for those people. To hear the snarky remarks, the distasteful comments, even the looks from the audience as I'm trying to represent my people, it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking because all that mattered to the majority was, we need this money for these reasons, rightfully so, and it's only going to cost you this. And then you have these schools that many would consider to be the more affluent schools, the schools that we would love for our children to have access to or be enrolled in, but we can't, maybe because of transportation barriers or other things. But the bottom line is, that's who was in the audience. And it's like, to hear how the previous referendum benefited you, that's great. Those babies deserve that. And so do my babies. So do the District 4 babies. So do all of the children that's living on this side of town, living in poverty. They deserve that and more. And what I can speak on is my time in this space, on this board. Everything that I have proposed has been on behalf of my constituents, my people. I haven't done anything selfishly in this space. I don't benefit from none of this.